Close your eyes for a moment and imagine. You wake up one morning, 40,000 years ago. But this isn't a gentle dawn with warm sunshine, birdsong, or the smell of coffee drifting through the air. No, what you feel first is the wind, slicing through the rough animal hide you're wrapped in, cutting straight into your bones like 1,000 icy needles stabbing your flesh. The air is thick, heavy with the smoke of a dying fire mixed with the rancid smell of animal fat. You sit up in a cramped stone cave, hearing children whimper from the cold, adults sniffling, and the fire crackling low, almost gone. Outside, a blizzard lashes against the rock walls, the howling wind screaming like invisible monsters in the night. This is the Ice Age, and it's nothing like any winter we know. Temperatures regularly plunge below -30 degrees Celsius, often even lower. The sky is perpetually overcast, the sun reduced to a faint pale disk behind thick, endless clouds. Northern Europe, from what we now call Britain all the way to the Black Sea, is not green forest nor fertile field. It is nothing but a frozen wasteland, an endless expanse of ice and snow. In this world, there are only two kinds of beings: those strong enough to adapt and endure, and those swallowed forever by the ice. The Neanderthals were the ones who adapted brilliantly. They weren't tall and lean like us modern humans. Instead, their bodies were compact, powerfully built, with thick arms and legs and dense bones. They were built like human tanks, compressed by nature itself to conserve every drop of body heat. Their broad rib cages and massive lungs hauled in the icy air. And most distinctive of all, their enormous noses, their wide nasal cavities, acted like natural furnaces, warming each breath before it reached their lungs, and recovering moisture with every exhale. At first glance, they might have looked like brutish giants. But in truth, they were masterpieces of evolution, living machines engineered for survival in the crucible of the Ice Age. But even a perfectly designed body can't beat hunger. You can wear animal hides to fight the cold. You can hide in a cave to escape the wind. But if you don't have enough energy, enough calories to burn, your body will betray you, shutting down even as you sit beside the fire. An adult Neanderthal needed more than 5,000 calories a day just to stay alive, just to keep their internal furnace blazing. And there were no potatoes, no bread, no stocked pantries. There was only one path to survival: hunting the giant beasts of the Ice Age. And above all of them, one prize reigned supreme: the woolly mammoth. But before we reach the hunt, you need to understand this. Every single day in the Ice Age was already a battle. One mistake, one untreated wound, or simply letting the fire die out overnight. Any of these could mean death. The cold of this era didn't just freeze rivers and mountains. It froze hope itself. And in that unforgiving world, the Neanderthals, our vanished cousins, rose to face the greatest trial of their existence: to hunt down a mammoth and wrest life itself from the jaws of extinction. Picture this. In the distance, a low rumble rolls across the frozen plain. The ground beneath your feet begins to tremble, and clumps of snow fall from the bare branches overhead. It's not an earthquake. It's not thunder. It's the footfalls of a herd of woolly mammoths drawing near. Through the blinding white haze of snow, colossal silhouettes emerge, massive bodies cloaked in long, shaggy hair. Each one stands nearly 11 feet tall at the shoulder, weighing 6 or even 7 tons, equivalent to 2 modern trucks. Beneath that shaggy coat lies a fat layer nearly 8 inches thick, turning their bodies into living fortresses against the merciless cold. Their tusks curve outward in great arcs, some over 10 feet long, like enormous scythes ready to cut down anything in their path. With a single swing, they could send a Neanderthal or even a cave lion or saber-tooth hurtling through the air like a broken twig. Yet to the Neanderthals, mammoths were not just a threat. They were walking supermarkets. One adult mammoth could provide over 4 million calories, enough to feed a band of 25 for an entire month. And it wasn't just about meat. Their fat, rich and dense, could be used for cooking, for fueling lamps, even for waterproofing clothing. Their thick hides became windproof tents and warm coverings. Their enormous bones served as the framework for shelters, tools, and even fuel when wood was scarce. Sinew and intestines could be twisted into ropes tougher than anything else available. Nothing was wasted. Even the half-digested greens inside a mammoth's stomach, fermented grasses and leaves, were boiled into a vitamin-rich gruel, a rare burst of nutrients in a world where winter swallowed almost all plant life. But here lay the brutal truth. To gain all of this, Neanderthals had to gamble their lives. Hunting a mammoth was nothing less than rolling dice with death. A single stomp could crush a hunter flat. A tusk strike could tear a body apart. And yet, there was no alternative. Without mammoths, there was no survival. For Neanderthals, every encounter with these colossal beasts was a test at the very edge of existence. A desperate wager for food, for warmth, for shelter, and ultimately, for the future itself. One of the strangest, most ingenious hunting strategies of prehistoric humans is what scientists now call persistence hunting. Think about it, humans cannot outrun an antelope. We are slower than most prey, weaker than predators, and fragile compared to the beasts of the Ice Age. Yet, humans carried a unique biological weapon, sweat. While animals like deer or horses quickly overheat and must stop to pant, humans could keep running for hours under the blazing sun without collapsing. Our bodies are built for long-distance pursuit. So, groups of hunters would pick a target, often a strong but isolated animal, and begin the chase. Step after step, mile after mile, they would not let up. The prey, startled and forced into bursts of speed, would eventually exhaust itself. Muscles would give out, lungs would fail, and finally the great animal would stumble, too weak to move. At that moment, the hunters, drenched in sweat but still steady, closed in for the kill. This was not a strategy for lone heroes. It demanded teamwork, hunters taking turns, sharing the pursuit, keeping the rhythm of exhaustion alive. It was a perfect example of how patience and cooperation could transform fragile creatures into apex predators. Persistence hunting wasn't just a tactic. It was the first true proof that humanity's strength lay in unity. Hunting a mammoth was never a reckless impulse. It was a primal military operation, where every move and every sound had to be calculated. First came the scouts. The most agile hunters tracked herds across the snow, studying every massive footprint pressed deep into the frost. They inspected dung to judge freshness and diet, sometimes squeezing it in their hands, even smelling it, to know how far away the herd might be. The goal was not to bring down the strongest animal in the herd. That would be suicide. Instead, they sought weakness. An old bull limping with age, or a young calf straying too far from protection. These were the targets worth risking everything for. Once chosen, the clan began to plan the ambush. No maps, no compasses, only memory and an intimate knowledge of the land. Steep ice gullies, cliffs, and snow-covered marshes became natural traps. With shouts, flung stones, or blazing torches, they would funnel the beast into a dead end where escape was impossible. What's astonishing is how they coordinated. No complex language was needed, just hand signs, whistles, guttural calls, and the unspoken rhythm of shared danger. Even in howling winds, they could signal silently with nothing more than eye contact. Roles were clearly divided. The disturbers ran wide, making noise to spook and drive the mammoth. The blockers waited at choke points, ready to thrust their spears. The stabbers, the strongest, most experienced hunters, rushed in for the final blow. Every movement was bound by trust. A single mistake, hesitation, fear, a misplaced step could doom the entire group beneath tons of charging flesh and ivory. A mammoth hunt wasn't just about food and survival. It was a ritual of courage, discipline, and unity, the moment when individuals dissolved into one, fighting not just for meat, but for the very future of the tribe. The ground trembles first. A low, rolling vibration rises through the frozen soil, as if the earth itself is warning of what is to come. Then the sound, deep and resonant, the heavy thud-thud of colossal feet crushing snow and ice. A shadow emerges through the mist of falling flakes. The bull mammoth. Its breath explodes in clouds of steam, drifting like smoke from a furnace. Its tusks, curved like scythes of ivory, gleam pale against the storm, each one capable of skewering a man in an instant. The giant pauses, trunk raised, sniffing the air. Somewhere in its ancient instincts, it feels the trap closing. Hidden in the snowdrifts above, 7 Neanderthals crouch, muscles burning from the long wait. The cold gnaws at their bones, but their hands are steady. Their spears, tipped with stone and hardened birch tar, glint in the weak light. They exchange a single glance, no words, no hesitation. A soft whistle, like a bird's cry, cuts the silence. It is the signal. They erupt from the white landscape as if the snow itself has come alive. A chorus of roars, primal and raw, fills the air. Spears drive forward with terrifying force. The first strike plunges deep behind the mammoth's shoulder blade. The sound is unforgettable, the crunch of bone, the tearing of flesh. The mammoth bellows in agony, a deafening blast that echoes across the tundra. Thrashes wildly, tusks swinging. One spear is shattered instantly. A hunter, too slow, is caught in the beast's furious charge, lifted and hurled like a rag doll into the snow, his body twisting unnaturally on impact. Chaos ignites. Blood spatters hot against the frozen air. Steam rises from the mammoth's flanks, mingling with the breath of desperate men. More spears slam home, stabbing deep into ribs, lungs, and belly. The bull, maddened, rears, its trunk whipping through the blizzard like a serpent. Then, a moment of suicidal bravery. One young hunter dives low, sliding beneath the flailing tusks. With every ounce of strength, he drives his spear upward, straight into the tender flesh of the throat. The weapon pierces true. Blood erupts in a scalding spray as he rolls clear, just as the titanic body begins to falter. The mammoth stumbles, trumpeting in rage one final time. His knees buckle. Snow shakes loose from the cliffs above as the giant crashes down, a mountain of fur and flesh, shaking the earth with its death. Silence follows. Only the ragged breaths of the survivors, the hiss of blood steaming against ice, and the distant eerie cry of ravens circling overhead. The hunters stand over their fallen enemy, trembling, not from cold now, but from the raw weight of victory. They have won. But at what cost? One of their own lies broken in the snow. The mammoth is theirs, yet the price of survival has been carved deep into their souls. The death of the mammoth wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of another battle. The battle against time, the freezing cold, and the predators already catching the scent of blood from afar. Crows shrieked hoarsely in the gray sky, circling hungrily. Further away, the silhouettes of wolves began to appear along the horizon, their yellow eyes glowing in the snow. The Neanderthals knew all too well, if they didn't move fast, this colossal feast would soon be stolen. The moment the mammoth collapsed, the clan sprang into action. Stone knives and flint blades, sharpened to surgical edges, gleamed in their hands. The sound of slicing hide, the crackle of steaming fat meeting frozen air, echoed in the wind. The strongest man began opening the belly, dragging aside the heavy, thick skin to reveal a treasure trove of red meat and white fat. An old woman bent down, her trembling but skilled hands cutting into a front leg. Inside lay marrow, pink, fatty, rich, a nutritional treasure, a life-saving energy bomb that could keep children alive for many days. The children rushed closer, their eyes wide with wonder at the sight of fresh red meat, the first in weeks after surviving only on roots and dried fat. Fat was cut into massive chunks, stacked in piles. Everyone knew this was precious fuel. In the howling nights to come, just a small piece of mammoth fat thrown onto the fire would be enough to keep the group warm until dawn. Nothing was wasted. The thick hide was stripped and spread across the snow like a giant carpet. Some of the younger men began fashioning it into shelter. Ribs as frames, hide as windproof walls, a new tent large enough to protect an entire family. Smaller pieces of hide were cut, ready to be sewn into cloaks and shoes. Even the massive bones had purpose. They would become tools, tent frames, or fuel when wood ran out. The towering tusks, symbols of nature's raw power, would be carved into weapons, levers, or hunting gear, ensuring preparation for the hunts yet to come. Even the mammoth's stomach was opened. Inside remained half-digested grasses and shoots. Boiled, they became a strange but vitamin-rich stew. the only greens available in a land where fruit and vegetables had long vanished. For 3 days straight, the clan worked without pause. Meat was cut into long strips, hung on rawhide racks to freeze-dry in the brutal wind, an ancient natural preservation method. Other cuts were roasted immediately, the rich aroma of sizzling fat drifting across the icy valley. By nightfall, the Neanderthals gathered around the fire, tearing into juicy strips of mammoth meat, their bellies full for the first time in weeks. Their voices carried with renewed strength, and in their hearts burned a fragile but powerful truth. They had beaten nature, if only for now. The mammoth's carcass soon dwindled to a skeleton, stark and massive, lying exposed on the snow like a monument to the harshness of survival. But in the eyes of those who lived, there was pride. They had earned this victory, and with it, a chance to survive one more winter. But the story of Neanderthals and mammoths doesn't end with hunting or butchering. Hidden deep in their very cells lies another connection, a link written into their DNA. Modern scientists, through painstaking studies of ancient genetic material, have discovered something extraordinary. Neanderthals and woolly mammoths shared similar genetic adaptations that allowed them to endure the brutal cold of the Ice Age. Take the LEPR gene, for example. This gene regulates how the body stores and burns fat. In an environment where calories meant survival, this was a lifeline. The Neanderthals' stocky bodies could store life-saving fat reserves, while mammoths carried massive layers of blubber that insulated them like living fortresses. Both species were, in a sense, genetically sculpted to be walking furnaces against the Ice Age chill. Then there's the MC1R gene, which influences skin and hair pigmentation. Evidence suggests that this gene mutation may have given Neanderthals lighter skin and reddish hair, adaptations to absorb scarce sunlight and produce vitamin D in the gloom of endless winters. For mammoths, the same genetic tweak ensured their dense, colored coats provided camouflage against predators and protection from the searing cold. And the SLC7A11 gene, tied to keratin production, gave them tougher skin, stronger nails, and resilient hair. For Neanderthals, this meant better protection against freezing winds and injuries. For mammoths, it translated into thick, coarse fur and unbreakable hides. This phenomenon is called convergent evolution, when two very different species evolve similar traits because they face the same environmental pressures. Think about it. One is a human cousin, the other an Ice Age giant, yet both shaped by the same frozen crucible into masters of survival. Every time a Neanderthal stabbed a spear into a mammoth's side, it wasn't just predator against prey. It was one Ice Age survivor confronting another, a mirror of adaptation, a kinship born from suffering the same merciless world. And here's the haunting truth. These shared genes, these small but powerful mutations, are proof that survival wasn't simply a matter of chance. It was the result of nature's relentless pressure, sculpting both Neanderthals and mammoths into creatures that could endure the impossible. In a way, every mammoth hunt was more than a battle for food. It was a meeting of two species who had learned the same brutal lesson. To live in the Ice Age, you had to change, or you would vanish. Yet even that strange bond between Neanderthals and mammoths could not last forever. Nature, the great sculptor of life, kept shifting its hand. The climate swung back and forth, plunging into brutal freezes, then easing into brief thaws. As the ice withdrew, forests crept northward, reclaiming the land. The vast grasslands, the natural supermarkets of the mammoths, slowly vanished. Without them, the giants had no room to thrive. Their numbers dwindled generation after generation. At the same time, a new player appeared on the stage, Homo sapiens, modern humans. We carried with us something different. Not just muscle, but innovation and imagination. We had lighter weapons, spears hurled from afar with the otlotl, the spear thrower, allowing us to hunt safely without facing tusks at arm's reach. We had bone needles, letting us craft fitted, layered clothing, far warmer than the rough hides of the Neanderthals. Most crucially, we had wide trade networks, sharing tools, ideas, and food between groups. When famine struck, we were never entirely alone. Meanwhile, Neanderthals grew increasingly isolated. Their small, scattered communities across Europe shrank further and further. And then, in just 5,000 years, a blink in evolutionary time, they vanished. No more footprints in the snow. No more hunting cries echoing across the tundra. No more flickering fires in icebound caves. The mammoths fared no better. Though resilient, they could not escape fate. They retreated to far-flung refuges, Arctic islands like Wrangel. And then, only 4,000 years ago, when Egypt's pyramids already towered in the desert, the last mammoth fell, closing the age of giants. Their story, written in blood, ice, and fire, reminds us of one enduring truth. Strength alone never guarantees survival. Adaptability does. Neanderthals, with their stocky frames and brute power, could not change quickly enough. Mammoths, living fortresses of the Ice Age, were undone by shifting climate and human pressure. But we, Homo sapiens, endured, not by force, but through intelligence, creativity, and above all, the ability to stand together as a community. Never forget this: survival is never permanent. It is always fragile, always dependent on adaptation. And every victory only buys us time. One more day, one more generation, one more civilization. So, next time you pull a coat tighter against the cold, or step into the warmth of your home without a second thought, pause for just a moment. Remember the Neanderthals, our cousins, who braved the Ice Age with nothing but stone, fire, and raw determination. Remember the mammoths, thundering titans, who fed them, clothed them, and gave them a chance to see another sunrise. Their story isn't just ancient history. It's a mirror, a reminder that survival is always earned, never given, that adaptability and unity matter more than brute force, and that every comfort we enjoy today was bought by the blood, sweat, and brilliance of those who came before. If this journey into the frozen past struck something in you, if it made you see survival in a new light, then don't let the story end here. Backhand index pointing right, hit subscribe. Backhand index pointing right, turn on the notification bell, so you never miss the next chapter of humanity's untold history. Backhand index pointing right, and share your thoughts in the comments. Would you have dared to face down a mammoth with nothing but a spear? Because just like fire bound Neanderthals together in the dark, stories bind us now. And together we'll keep that fire alive.